Hey guys, here is the information for your animal project. First thing you need to do is come into classwork and you'll see JS Animal Drawing Project, JavaScript. And when you open it up, it gives you a list of what you need. That is basically the rubric that I use to grade you for. So you need to pick an animal, first of all, that is real. It can be extinct, but it has to be real. No unicorns, no mythological animals, things like that. You have to have the correct colors, which means no pink elephants, correct features. It needs to be in the correct ecosystem or environment. And by that I mean if it's a plains animal, it needs to look like the plains, a giraffe or a lion, for example. If it's in the Arctic or Antarctic, then it needs to have those features. So you need to figure out where it would live and make sure that's what you're doing. Finally, you need accessories. For examples of what I'm talking about for these, you can come over here to your stream and you'll notice that I've posted some pictures from previous years. The last thing in that post is actually a video because I had students get that early, so they animated theirs. So this particular video is a student that did a water scene and made bubbles. To create your picture, you're going to come to Con, and you're going to go to the animal attack, which is the last one in the lesson that we did last week, right after Brown Bear Eyes, Project Animal Attack. When you get there, you're going to see code that's already there. It's got a head and a body. Now, this code is using what you learned last week, which is creating math statements using these variables. You don't have to use these. What I would do is I would come up here and I would erase all of that code. Yes, the picture will stay there, but once you start drawing, it will go away. First thing you need to do is create your background. Your background has to be at the top if you remember. And it doesn't matter what color it is as long as it goes with whatever you're doing. If it's at night, make it a darker blue. If it's water, figure out, what color the water you want to be, and that's fine. And then you're going to draw on top of it. If you remember, I told you to use commenting. So as you're drawing, you know what the shape is. Okay, so I'm going to draw the body of mine. I'm going to put it in the middle. Say I'm going to draw a bear and I want my bear standing up. So I would probably make the width 50 and then the height 120. That way it makes it vertical. Now, animals don't have square bodies. Okay, so one of the things that you can do is go back into your rectangle code. And if you notice when it pops up, you see that it gives you a radius, a fifth element, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that radius will round the corners. And the bigger the numbers, the rounder the corners that it'll be. Now, obviously, it's got a limit. So what you need to do is decide how round you want them, and that will give you the rounded corners. Also, another trick that you can use, and you can use copy and paste, I just drew a second ellipse. I'm going to put a different fill in above it. I'm just going to make that one red. And I'm going to move it down. And if you need something transparent so that you can see through it on your fill, one of the things that you can do on this is you can add a fourth number, which affects the opacity, whether it's opaque or not. The lower the number, the more transparent it is. Obviously, a 0 is completely transparent. The higher the number, 255 is the highest you can get. Obviously, you can't see through it at all. So if you need something you need to see through, you can adjust that. And it also lets you kind of mix colors too. If you can't get a color that you like, you could create it like that. Finally, one of the things that you can do with this code and the radius is you can invert it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my red rectangle over. There we go. And I'm going to make it more of a square. Let's go 50 by 50. And I want this to be a flower. Now, you could use that as the center of your flower and draw petals off of it. But if you come back up to this rectangle and you put a negative on that radius, it will invert the corners so it looks like a flower. Now, obviously, that's pretty big, so I want my radius smaller. And that's a really good way that you can create flowers if you need them for your accessories. When you're drawing, if you need a thick line for something, if you scroll down a little bit under colors, obviously that's background, you can turn fill off. Stroke weight is the thickness of a line, so if I click on that, it'll open it in a new window. And your stroke weight of 10 will make the line thicker. Now, you need to remember, once that you change this, it keeps it the same until you add a different one and change it back. So anything that I do up here, just copy this one, is going to be affected by that. You need to remember that. If you want it to go back to regular, you would change it back to 1, which is the original. You can use decimals. It needs to have a leading 0. If you need very fine, and you can make it as thick as you want it. Now, you need to also remember that if you're using this to create the body of something, you will have to come over here and change the color with stroke. Okay. You also cannot put a group of lines together and then fill the inside. To do fill, it has to be one of the shapes, including an arc. There's an image library. You cannot use images for this picture. Everything you have to do has to be drawn. Anytime you see something you want to use and you're not quite sure how it works, all you have to do is click on it, and it opens up in a new tab, and then it lets you play with it. This one I've had a lot of people use for fish. Obviously, it needs a little bit of adjusting, but you can come over here and you can play with the numbers. That's the wrong curve. Here we go. You can play with the numbers to get it the way you want. And if you look, it tells you up here, X and Y of the first endpoints. The first control points are the flow of the curve, second control points, flow of the curve, and then the second endpoints. So you can come into this number and you can affect it. So that's the one we need to move. So our tail looks a little more even. So now we're going to go to the X. We're going to move it over a little bit more. Let's make it 173. That's a little more even. Now the cool thing about this is when you fill it, it's going to fill both this part and that. So if you want to do fish, you can. But you need to remember, this is not a fish. You need eyes, you need fins, dorsal, and so forth. And you'll need more than one. Okay, one fish does not make an animal picture. If you have any questions, email me. This assignment is not due until the first week of April, maybe April 9th. So you have roughly a month to do it, so you have plenty of time. Once we get done with this assignment, then we do our 3D print of whatever animal you drew. So you need to make sure that as you're drawing your animal, you take that into consideration. Finally, as you're working on this, every so often you need to come and click Save. And at the end of class, you also need to make sure you click Save. That way your code is here next week. Like I said, if you have any questions, make sure you email me. Happy drawing.